Good morning, everybody. This is the live market open for Tuesday, March 22nd. I'm Yohay Elam of Forex Crunch and Market Movers podcast, doing the show as usual for FX Street. This morning, as usual, we'll talk about recent developments in markets, various charts and levels, the next 24 hours, and of course, your questions. I see quite a few of you in the room. If you cannot see the chat box, the room alongside the screen, please go to the address here, tlk.io/fxstreet-live-video. Okay. The mood this morning is, I prepared some stuff for you as I do every morning, but we had just breaking news from Europe. We had two explosions in the Brussels airport, at least 11 people killed. These are pictures from the scene. Doesn't look too good. Anyway, this happened around an hour ago, and it's still breaking news. It already has some impact on the market mood. We also had just coming out right now French data and PMIs. Let's see what the numbers tell us. Okay, so manufacturing PMI in France, services PMI. Services PMI in France advanced from 49.2 to 51.2, and the manufacturing PMI dropped a bit from 50.2 to 49.6, so quite mixed. All in all, the composite PMI is a bit higher. Let's see if it has any. This is, of course, the FX Street calendar on Forex Crunch. Let's see if it has any direct impact on the euro. I can't say I see anything now. Bad news from Brussels, I think, has more impact at the moment. Okay. Anyway, impact on market mood and how stocks are opening and on other things. More importantly for markets, perhaps this volatility was caused because of the reports from Brussels. Again, two explosions in the Brussels airport. According to what I'm reading, at least 11 people killed, 11 casualties. But this, according to reports, it happened at 8 local time. Now it's 9 local time. Time in Brussels is like the time here in Barcelona. And it's still a breaking news story, so we'll follow the news as we speak. Just to remind those of you following, these kind of news that a few days ago we had one of the terrorists from the Paris attacks captured in Brussels after a long manhunt lasting 4 months. So it might be some kind of retaliation by the terrorists. Anyway, this has an impact on the mood on stocks, a bit also on the euro, a bit of a slide on the euro this morning. More than the French PMIs. For markets, we're soon going to have the German PMIs and then the German IFO business climate. See your comments. Yeah, it's sad. I agree. I waited for my trades to trade green yesterday from the early Asian session. Now they just turned green. It's a shame it took people dying. Yeah. Markets move all the time, and on bad news and good news, and can make profits and losses on both directions. Anyway, euro dollar, as you're seeing now, 112.40 under the 112.50 line, which is not that strong. 112.15 is stronger support, followed by 110.70. Resistance is at 113.75. Anyway, let's talk about other stuff we had yesterday. I wanted to begin the show not with these bad news, but with few surprising comments we had yesterday from Federal Reserve officials, both Lockhart and Lacker, and I think also John Williams of the San Francisco Fed, talked about potentially even raising rates in April. And that's quite surprising. In April, that's the next Fed meeting. We don't have a press conference. We don't have fresh forecasts. But especially Lockhart of the Atlanta Fed, he seemed very optimistic about that, because he sort of countered the extreme dovish position of Fed seen in the statement. I was talking about how extreme it was. It trying to find reasons, explaining why. We can repeat that, of course, if we have time. But anyway, so these guys backtracked. I still don't think a rate hike in April is feasible. June is more likely, but this is certainly a hawkish shift. Now, after what happened yesterday, we don't know. Sorry, not yesterday. Last week, we're not sure if markets are skeptical about the Fed's any Fed hawkishness. So far, I can't say it really gave a big boost to the dollar. The dollar did recover yesterday, and that continued, but it's still very, very limited. Okay. So that was one theme I wanted to speak about. Another thing was more talk about an agreement between OPEC and non-OPEC members. Remember, there's a meeting between them in April 17th, regarding a freeze in oil production. Iran will probably not participate anyway. I'm skeptic of that. I don't think they'll reach any kind of an agreement, especially if oil prices remain at current levels, which are not that low. Okay, so not that low in comparison to what we've seen beforehand. Of course, low in comparison to prices we've seen during several years. Let's take a look at oil prices before we continue. Well, meanwhile, in the meantime, euro-dollar continues its slide. I guess more reports from Brussels more than anything else, or just a damp mood. Anyway, oil prices remain on high ground. WTI crude oil 41.42, and we can mark another line of resistance right here. At the moment, this doesn't have a big impact on the Canadian dollar because of the Canadian budget, but it does. It is. But it's also important to remember that the longer the prices stay above $40, the higher the incentive for U.S. shale producers to restart some of the idle rigs, and that could push production up and oil prices down. Okay, another thing to watch tonight. There's lots of speculation about primaries. Meaning the political scene in the United States is becoming more important as the chances for a Trump presidency are growing, and that's quite scary. So we have primaries today in Arizona and Utah for both parties, and in Idaho, I think only the Democratic Party. The big focus is Arizona, where it's a winner takes it all for the Republican Party. Again, markets would feel more comfortable if Trump were out of the race the moment he's still in, and that could have a growing political impact. So there is sort of there will be half an eye on the US primaries, especially in the US session, and the Asian session will learn the results. Okay, some comments here. Yeah, gold spike on bomb news. It could be, yeah, it's sort of the gold is seen as a safe haven. I learned that only the USA can refine most, about 70% of them. Yeah, so German NTV also speaks of a bomb attack. Yeah, now, yeah, it looks more like an attack than an accident. Yeah, I'll check out some news outlets to see if we have updated casualties reported in Brussels airports. Explosions. I read 11 dead. Anyway, yeah, it does not seem like an accident. Anyway, landings and 11 dead and 25 wounded. Sad news this morning, and it seems that no departures or arrivals. I mean, the flights are diverted away from the Brussels airport. It's called Sventerm. I've been there a few times, but Zaventem. Okay, anyway. Sad news this morning from Brussels airport, having an impact on markets. Negative mood in Europe and slightly lower euro-dollar. Okay. What's the link? to get here. To get where? Sorry. Thanks, Sinatra, for the link for, news from German TV. Quite easy to understand, even if you don't speak German. Bombenschlag am Flughafen Brüssel. 2 explosions. So sad news. The link to the room. Well, here we are. It's on the screen now. Anyway, let's continue with other events we have this morning. Let's talk about what we had yesterday. So we had a few misses on data. US existing home sales missed with 5.08 million. Eurozone consumer confidence missed with -10. Both figures are not that important. I can't say they had an impact on Eurodollar. What had a bigger impact is the Fed hawks that spoke out yesterday. In general, markets were a bit slow yesterday. It was a holiday yesterday in Japan, and it still echoes from the Fed, and we have bigger events later this week. So it wasn't really a very exciting day. In Australia, we had the home price index rise by 0.2%, more or less as expected. And Stevens, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia, talked that he would, of course, like a weaker Australian dollar, but so would other central banks. Basically, didn't say anything really, really meaningful. Let's look at the charts before we move on to other events we have today. One of the next event is at 8:30 GMT, and that's of course, the German PMIs. Okay, so Eurodollar, as I said, 112.15 is the next level to watch. We're currently digging the lows, 112.27. Bad news from Brussels. PMIs should have a bigger effect later on. We'll talk about that. Pound dollar also down on this sad news. It's more of a risk-off atmosphere, and the pound is sensitive in general. We had no news from the pound from the UK yesterday. We had, of course, over the weekend, the resignation of Ian Duncan Smith, prominent figure in the Tory party, and that weighed on the pound because he's a significant member, and he quit, and he talked against his supports of Brexit, and he challenges the risk for David Cameron as leader of the Conservative Party, the ruling party now in the UK. Anyway, today we have inflation. We'll soon talk about that. But currently, the next level to watch is 142.80, 142.40, and then 142.75. On the top side, 143.60 really works nicely now. Worked as support. Let's see if it works as resistance. 144.40 as further resistance. Dollar yen sliding a bit. That's natural. It's, of course, that can be easily explained by the fact that we had these explosions in Brussels, and this means that it's risk off, supporting the safe haven yen. 111 still works as support, resistance 112.20, which worked very, very nicely as resistance. So the yen for a change. I'm not a big fan of dollar yen, but it works really nicely as with the technical lines. Trying to also pick up more news as we speak. I see Sinatra. Thanks. German TV speculating about disappointment jihadists could be Flandern separatists. I don't think so. I mean, I know there's a independent movement in Flanders, in the Flemish-speaking, Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, but so far I haven't heard of any violent attempts by these guys. And the same thing with here in Catalonia, the independent movement is very peaceful. Anyway, we don't have. What I'm reading in English language newspapers is that the suspect is a jihadist, but we still don't know that for sure. Anyway, let's go back to Forex. At the moment, the charts, dollar yen 111 to 112.20 is the range. The yen is strengthening on safe haven flows. Dollar CAD, we also see here the risk-off sentiment. That means a weaker Canadian dollar. It's mostly a stronger US dollar, a stronger Japanese yen, of course. 131, current level is 130.20, and then the next level to watch is 131.70, followed by 132.50. On the downside, of course, we have the round number of 130. Yeah, anything is a speculation because it's really breaking news. It happened at 8 local time. We're now an hour and 15 minutes after the blasts, according to these reports. Belgian government has put the country on the highest level of alert in the wake of these blasts. Belgian police currently confirm only 1 dead. Yeah, we'll continue following the news. I'll continue talking about currencies. Let's continue to the Australian dollar. We had this job opening from Glenn Stevens. Also here, a reaction to the Brussels blasts. 70 under 76 once again. This line isn't that important. Perhaps we should put the line here. The Australian dollar, which is one of my favorites, has become more choppy and less predictable. 75.60 to 76.35, I would say, is the narrow range at the moment, but higher ranges to watch are 76.80 and 75.30. Okay. Kiwi dollar, same reaction, sliding on the bad news, 67.40, or support at 67, resistance at 68.20. Very narrow range yesterday. No New Zealand news coming up, so this is mostly now a risk-off move. Dollar Swiss moving a bit up with the rise of the dollar, 97.12. I would say resistance 97.50, support 96.60. Euro Swiss very much in range. Well, sliding a bit actually in recent days, very slowly. Well, nobody's watching. 109. If it falls too much, remember the Swiss National Bank could intervene, perhaps around 108. Yeah, dollar yen is coming down. Yeah, Bloomberg said 11 dead, 20 wounded. That's what I also said beforehand. Yeah, it's scary for markets. Black humor is okay. However, gold long memorial trade. Yeah. Okay. Euro yen now rising just a bit. Sorry, euro pound. Euro pound, because the pound is a bit more vulnerable in general in comparison to the euro. Anyway, 78.50. Currently almost touched, working nicely as resistance. Next resistance line there is 79.30. Support at 77.40. Euro yen naturally coming down because of the safe haven yen. So 125 is the current level of support. 127 is resistance. Pound yen 159 and 80, falling under the round 60 level. Pound is risk, yen is safe. That's what's going on. 162.20 still works as support, as resistance. Sorry. Support at 158.50, further levels to watch 156.10, and to the top side 163.80. Also, oil is coming down just a bit, 41. No, not that significant. Let's take a look again at euro dollar, 120, 112.24, around the lows of the day. 112.15 is support. Remember that until not that long ago, the euro used to be a safe haven currency. This isn't exactly the case anymore, but we could see bigger movements in more vulnerable currencies like the pound in comparison to the euro, even though the bad news comes, of course, from the capital of the European Union, from Brussels, okay? Yeah, another newspaper confirms that the terror alert level has been increased to the maximum of 4. Okay, just reading out some of the headlines coming out. Yeah. Okay, so that's what's going on now in markets. Bad news from Brussels this morning, dominating the scene, having an impact, positive impact on the yen, negative and a bit on the dollar, negative impact on all other currencies. Okay. We do have in 10 minutes the German PMIs. That's the next event. Let's look at events for today in general. Okay, so we had the French PMIs earlier. They came out mixed. Services beat, manufacturing missed a bit. We have German PMIs at 8:30 GMT. So the services PMI is expected to tick down just a bit from 55.3 to 55. We'll follow that. The manufacturing PMI, which is probably more important because Germany is a country which produces still a lot of stuff, well, and that stands out against many other Western countries. Anyway, a small rise here is expected from 50.5 to 50.8. We'll cover that in around 10 minutes. I think that, well, today's a busy day in Germany. We also have the IFO figure at 9 GMT. Okay. Right here, this is probably the most important release this morning, just after the show, because IFO is Germany's #1 think tank. And then we have at 10 GMT at 11 local time, German zoo economic sentiment. But now with the news from Brussels, I think the IFO figure is still important. But the news from Brussels overshadows a bit the German PMIs. The Eurozone PMIs released at the same time as the German IFO, not as important as the German PMIs, and of course overshadowed by the IFO figure. In addition, also an important release from the UK, inflation figures. Well, let's just talk about everything in chronological order. So the core consumer price index, let's begin with the headline figure is what the Bank of England is watching, an expected rise from 0.3. It's expected to rise 0.3 every year, just like last month. So it's very shallow, of course, blamed on oil prices. Well, rightfully so. Core CPI, we don't have expectations here, but it was 1.2 last time. Let's see if it ticks up or ticks down. It could have a significant impact on the pound. Remember, towards the release, we often have leaks or markets front-running expectations, and afterwards, of course, we have a reaction. This doesn't mean that the inflation figures will continue impacting the pound for the rest of the day. Okay, so have here the wrong time. Anyway, it's 10:30 local time, 9:30 in the UK. Most important figure is the I see more stuff here. Bomb in the metro. This is a grand chess day. If you could tell us a bit more about that. Anyway, bad news all around. Anyway, let's continue with the data. First, well, in the UK, the most important thing to watch is the most important thing to watch is the headline CPI and then the core CPI. IFO, what are we expecting from IFO? I think times here on the calendar are wrong. That's 9 GMT, not 9 local time. I have the local time here. This is a grand chess day. Oh, we have here the video. Thanks for posting that. Yeah. Yeah, quite scary. Well, thanks for posting that. Anyway, I also have here something. This is another video emerging from the anyway, looks like lots of damage in Brussels. Okay, let's get back to Forex. Grand chess, because whoever did this It's the moment for policymakers and other power groups to make their move now in the wake of this event. Okay. Anyway, this bad news from Brussels, as I said, has a growing impact on markets. It wasn't clear how many people were hurt at the beginning. It's still unclear, but yeah, we have a bigger fall in euro dollar, falling below 112.15. As I was speaking about other events, 111.90 is the low so far. 112.15 was broken, taken down. The next line of support is 110.70. Pound dollar also extending its falls, sort of battling the 143 level. 143.80 is support. The low so far has been 142.90. And dollar yen, as you mentioned here, also continues to fall, 111.45. Maybe these additional reports about a blast in the metro, or just, yeah, reports of a metro station blast in Malbec. Don't know how to pronounce that. Metro station attack in Brussels metro station close to the EU buildings at Malbec. I really don't know how to pronounce that, but there are also scenes here of this is from the area of the metro station. Anyway, so this adds to the fall. Really bad news this morning. So weighs on markets. Dollar yen already 111.46. Okay, so it's getting worse also here. Safe haven yen is in demand. Euro dollar in the meantime climbing back above 112, but still significantly lower on the day, under the 112.15 line of support. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we do have quite a few figures today. I do think still that the German IFO business climate could have an impact, but the events in Brussels are overshadowing. Yeah, metro shutdown in Brussels. Short scalp euro yen, it looks like better than euro dollar. Yeah, because the yen is a safe haven, and so movements. So it's exactly a scissor effect. Anyway, the German zoo economic sentiment is released at 10 GMT. Shouldn't have a big impact because of what's going on in Brussels, and because of the IFO figure, which is more important. Quarter to 2 GMT, we have the US market flash manufacturing PMI. It's not as important as the ISM one, but still of significance. And for those of you trading the Canadian dollar away from the events in Brussels, let's take another look at the Canadian dollar. We have the currently 131, bounced on the day more or less, and moving a bit higher. Anyway, we have the annual budget release in Canada. 1 minute. Why am I mentioning this event? Because the Bank of Canada said it's waiting for the government and the fiscal stimulus package that the government is about to introduce in order to decide on the next policy moves. And it's a new Canadian government. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and his Finance Minister, Monroe, are expected to introduce a new budget, a stimulus package. If it's a big stimulus package, it's good news for the Canadian dollar, because it means that the Bank of Canada will not have to act. If it's a small stimulus package, it's bad news for the Canadian dollar, because that means we could have a rate cut in Canada. Okay, so now we're just about to have the German manufacturing PMIs. Remember, the events in Brussels taking over. Anyways, a small disappointment on the manufacturing PMI, 50.4, and instead of 50.8. And services, we have a small surprise, 55.5 instead of 55.3. I would say not meaningful. Okay, so again, they're not big surprises. They offset each other, and most importantly, we have tragic news this morning in Brussels, and that is taking over the news. Okay, so Yeah, more and more reports are coming out about that second blast in the metro station in close to the headquarters of the European Union. Anyway, this is of course dominating the morning, overshadowing other figures. Still have events in Canada and in the US, as I mentioned, that could have an impact. Later on, the Canadian Canadian budget, and during the night we have the primaries in the United States. So we have primaries in Arizona, Utah for both parties, and Idaho for the Democratic Party. Most important one to watch is Arizona because it's a winner takes it all for the Republican Party. And there's growing fear that Donald Trump could become president, could be nominated. There's a big anti-Trump movement within the Republican Party and also outside. Okay, so the authorities in Brussels have shut down the metro system, and at least 10 dead and 30 injured in the airport explosions. This doesn't take into account the events in the metro. Resumption of the fall in euro dollar at the moment, 111.94. Okay. And the pound dollar is extending its fall, 142.60. Next level to watch, 142.40. After that, it's 141.75. To the top side, 142.80. I would use it as resistance, but let's wait and see. And 143.60 is stronger resistance over there. Dollar yen, hasn't moved much since I last mentioned it, but 111.40. Support 111, resistance 112.20. Dollar CAD extending its gains now, 131.20. Aussie dollar getting closer to the previous lows, which is now support at 75.60, falling below the line as we speak. Kiwi dollar also sliding towards 67. You guys mentioned before euro yen. It's taken it. Wow, that's quite a nice fall. We fell under 124, 124.75. Just before we heard the bad news about the explosions, euro yen was trading above 126. Okay, so something like 150 pips fall on this currency pair. And pound yen is also getting closer, fell under 159, currently 158.80. Support is at 158.50. So quite a dramatic morning in currency markets. Also the price of oil, after hesitating at first, we had it fall to, we're seeing it fall to 41.30. Clearly a risk-off morning. Euro dollar now struggling with the lows. 111.92 already fell to 111.88. The next line of support is only at 110.70. The pre-Fed low, or the pre-Draghi high. Okay, so this is for me still a clear level. Yes, we did tick down a bit below that just before the Fed, but then we had a move to the upside. See if I can nothing new that I know of regarding Brussels. We know that around 8 o'clock local time were two blasts around the American Airlines desk at the Brussels airport. At least 10 are killed, if not 11, at these blasts. Airport has been basically shut down, no landings, no departures. In addition, there was a blast in a metro station near the headquarters of the European Union, and the authorities decided to shut down all the metro system in Brussels. Okay. Belgian Prime Minister following minute by minute. More reports coming out. French media reports there were 2 explosions minutes apart just before 8 a.m. Brussels airport, one in the departures area, and one on or near the runway. A false ceiling collapsed, causing lots of dust and smoke. The departures area had easy access to the public, but the runway area would have been close to public access and raises questions about how the explosion could have happened there. I'm reading out a report in The Guardian. Anyway, this bad news coming out this morning already has an impact on markets, overshadowing the PMIs, which usually are market moving. I still think the upcoming report, the IFO, still should have an impact, but let's wait and see. Okay, any questions? We'll soon move to the wrap up for the day. I think we talked about all currency charts, all the upcoming events for today, things we had yesterday. Let's just talk about other stuff we had that's going on this week. Yesterday was mostly Fed echoes. That means we had an extremely dovish Federal Reserve decision back last week. It hit the dollar hard. Yesterday we had some kind of backtracking by a few Fed members, which even talked about a move in April. Today we have the German surveys, again overshadowed by Brussels, and the UK inflation, which I talked about. We also have the Canadian budget. And tomorrow, as usual, on Wednesday, we have the oil inventories, especially the distillates, gasoline, and production figures. As I mentioned, oil prices are rising, and this means that we could have more oil coming out. So it's sort of a pendulum swing that balances out. On Thursday, we have retail sales in the UK, durable goods orders in the United States to tell us something new about investments, and the regular jobless claims. Friday, it's an Easter holiday in many countries, but we have the US final GDP released on thin liquidity. It should provide a lot of action. But I can already tell you that for sure, not only today, what's going on now in Brussels will continue moving markets also tomorrow, at least one more day of news impact. The attention span of everybody, especially in the Western world, is not so, is quite short, but this is a big event, and I'm sure it'll have an impact for at least another day. Yeah, this is what I love about FX. You go into a low liquidity week because of Easter, and you get out of the blue news that pumps liquidity. Yeah, sad on its death. Yeah, so yeah, some say that trading Forex is like air traffic control. We talked about airports. You may have long minutes of boredom, and then suddenly a few minutes of sheer panic and crazy action. This is what we might be seeing today because of bad news today, and sometimes it's because of positive news. Let's take another look at currencies. Some stability in euro dollar, hugging the 112 level. 111.88 has been the low for today. Euro dollar currently dealing with a long-term downtrend line from the 2014 high. Okay, nice chart. I'll share it with everybody on the screen. Yeah, that's quite a nice line. Very colorful rainbow over there. Anyway, in May 2014, we had a high. That's when Draghi said that they feel comfortable to act. It was a hint that they'll set negative rates, and since then had the big downfall, rate cuts, negative rates, QE, you name it. In 2015, we had some stability, but now we might see euro dollar tackle this downtrend. Maybe this is the reason, the technical explanation for the current fall. Of course, the fundamental explanation is of course what's going on now in Brussels. Okay. Just don't be a liquidity provider now. Yeah. Sky News has latest video from the metro station blast.
Tanzania's semi-autonomous Zanzibar
sorry, it's the live one. Anyway, never mind. Ignore that. I've closed my trading runaways as far as I could. Caution mode. Yeah, it's uncertain time. We still have news coming out of Brussels, and it's quite messy. In these kind of events, we also have lots of false information coming out, either by the authorities for security reasons, or rumors are easier to believe because it's all fresh and nothing is fully confirmed. So yeah, it's quite messy. Okay. Yeah, let's get to the wrap up for today. Short euro dollar. Before that, we have a question here. Short euro dollar vs long. I don't know. It's quite messy with the news now from Brussels. In general, I think the reaction to Draghi was a bit too much because they did introduce a huge stimulus package. On the other hand, then we had the Fed decision, which was very surprisingly dovish. So yeah, I think it'll be hard for euro dollar to rise, but it doesn't mean it's going to fall that easily. Okay. Anyway, this is the wrap up for the live market open for Tuesday, March 22nd. Sad news today from Brussels dominates the news. Explosions at the airport, an explosion at a metro station close to the EU headquarters. 10 or 11 people dead at least in the capital of the European Union. It's breaking news. Things are still going on today. We still don't have a confirmation of who did that, how many people are dead, if we might have further events, hopefully not. It already has quite an impact on markets. It happened an hour and a half ago in the first explosions at the airport, and now the metro. Euro dollar is clearly down, reached a low of 111.88, was trading around 112.50. 112.15 is the line it broke below, and I think it still works. Well, we're getting close back to this line, but I think it could work as resistance. 111.88 is the low. Further support 110.70. High resistance, I would say, only at 113.75. Pound dollar certainly suffering as well. Also here we had a bounce, probably a false break under 142.80, as it seems for now at least. But we had a clear break under a convincing one under 143.65. Further resistance 144.40. Further support 142.40. 141.75. Of course, the round number of 140. Dollar yen, the yen gaining on safe haven flows. A bounce currently from the lows to 111.37. 111.52 is the level we're reading now. Support at 111, the line in the sand, and resistance very nicely at 112.20. Okay, look how 112.20 was support twice and now resistance. 111 was a double bottom, actually a triple bottom. If we ignore these moves right here. Dollar CAD currently around 131 in range between the round 130 level and 131.70. Oil prices are higher, but the bad news from Brussels still has a negative impact. Let's continue. Trying to pick up more news there. Aussie dollar suffered some job owning from Glenn Stevens. It didn't do much, but what's happening in Brussels does weigh on the pair. Had this small move to the downside. 75.50 was the level last seen, but we had a bounce back to the previous range. 75.75 is the current level. Yeah, quite a tight range over there. And the Kiwi dollar is sliding reached a low of 67.20, currently around 67.40, support 67, resistance 68.20. Before we had these blasts, we had other news coming out yesterday. We had what was surprising was to hear from the Fed officials, Lockhart, Lecker, and Williams, but especially Lockhart, say that April is certainly a live meeting and certainly an opportunity to raise rates. Okay, so that was a bit surprising. It had limited impact on the dollar, but we could, if we hear that more and more, it could be a significant backtrack from the rate hike talk. Sorry, the dovish talk we heard last week from the Fed. Okay, there's speculation about an agreement on a freeze in oil production. I think that isn't serious, especially as Iran is not in the picture, and especially as the motivation is low because oil prices are relatively higher. The meeting comes on April 17th in Doha, Qatar. Something to watch out for. Another thing to watch out for is the primaries in the United States, especially in Arizona. Markets are fearful, and I think rightfully so, of a Trump presidency. And of course, it's a long path to the White House, but anyway, I think it'll have a growing impact on markets every primaries contest, and we have quite a few from now until early June. Anyway, data yesterday was not that significant. Misses on U.S. existing home sales and also on Eurozone consumer confidence. Today it was supposed to be a busy morning. It still is a busy morning in terms of indicators. German PMIs were mixed, French PMIs were mixed. We have Eurozone PMIs. The most important thing is the German IFO business climate coming out in around 15 minutes. Again, a bit overshadowed by the news coming out from Brussels. In UK inflation figures important for the pound. I still think it'll have an impact, at least around the decision, half an hour before or after. Most important thing is headline inflation. Second is the core inflation. We also have the German zoo economic sentiment at 10, but it's the second in line to the IFO and coming out afterwards. And today we have things going on in Brussels. So yeah, US market flash manufacturing PMI according to GMT, and more importantly in Canada we have the annual budget release, critical for the Bank of Canada, critical for the Canadian dollar, bigger stimulus, stronger CAD, less stimulus, weaker CAD. That's basically what we need to know about that. We talked about we talked about everything. Let's see if we have more news from Brussels, and we'll have another look at the charts before we head off. So thanks Sinatra reporting here that the German ARD, its television station, says shots were heard and Arabic shouting. Is the UK holding back its data? Okay. Anyway, yeah, and the comment here, sell euro yen for risk off my view. Yeah, so far this has been going on. This trade has been looking quite successful this morning. So we have some stability here. Euro dollar at 112.02 after the big fall. It could be temporary. Euro yen certainly a bigger market mover. It fell all the way to 124.67, now bouncing back to 125, but a break under 125.50 and a big fall from the highs. So undoubtedly significant move. More news that I can see here. Airport attack blamed on suicide bomber. Unconfirmed. Several people injured in the metro explosion at Malbek metro station. Yeah, various leaders all over the world are expressing shock and horror. Yeah, that's it for now. Anyway, so thank you very much for everybody coming to the show this morning. A lot of focus was on the bad news from Brussels. And yeah, so it's quite sad. Explosions, people killed, metro and airport shut down, and this could have a much wider impact, as we've seen from the Paris attacks. Stronger dollar, stronger, even stronger yen, weaker currencies elsewhere, and yeah, so stay safe, everybody, in markets and on the street. And yeah, and see you tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. So that's it. Thank you, and bye-bye.